Hello, I'm Rose Kapelczynski, the immediate past president of AAPC, and so thrilled that that word past is in there now, and Becky Donatelli and Larry Wynn are doing all the heavy lifting. Wow, what inspiring stories about Ross Bates, who really transformed California politics and direct mail, and Linda Duvall. Even though you're a Republican, you've been a role model. You've been a role model for all women trying to get involved in politics. And I remember hearing about you in the 80s when I first got involved, so congratulations. 50 years ago, the AAPC began honoring the consultants who are doing the very best work in the country on political campaigns. Last year, we decided to start a new award, the President's Award for Public Service, to honor the consultant who was really making a difference outside of his or her day job, outside of the political consulting sphere. And I was thrilled when Jeff Pollock, friend, board member, and president of Global Strategy Group, nominated a person who really sets an example of how to do good and give back to the community. And here's a video to tell you a little bit about our inaugural honoree of the new President's Award.
So you had a heart attack, and that was a year ago.
Right. How are you, Dad? How's your life? Probably busier than I was before the heart attack.
You've been going non-stop for so long, Louis.
That's pretty Luis Miranda, his relentlessness. He'll keep going. That's what I keyed in on when I was playing Hamilton, and I was just playing my father. He's just a relentless motherfucker.
I am from Puerto Rico, a little town called Vega Alta.
All of us who come from Puerto Rico share an experience trying to do better in this other place.
Not everyone wanted us here. I saw that as an opportunity to reach out to other Latinos to open government to them.
Well, Letitia James for Attorney General.
No kisses.
Hurricane Maria, the strongest hurricane in history to make landfall.
For me, Puerto Rico is this perfect place that all of a sudden doesn't exist anymore. I immediately saw it as a responsibility to rebuild the island.
I tell him, I don't want to be a widow. There isn't another you to replace you.
Doing everything we can becomes the job.
Together, we cannot be stopped.
Thank you for putting that up. I'm Jeff Pollock, and I am here to introduce said honoree. It is very hard to explain who Luis Miranda is in a short period of time, but I think you're probably more interested in hearing from him than me. Don't clap back there. Luis and I have known each other for a long time. I started working with him in 2001. We were doing a race for mayor in New York City, where I was working for a guy named Fernando Ferrer. And we went through quite a year where we started off in fourth place, ended up on election day in first place, except, as you may or may not remember, election day was September 11th, 2001. And so we went through quite a day, quite a tragedy for the city, quite a tragedy for the nation. And election day was actually canceled and postponed for a couple weeks. And Luis and I continue to fight on for our candidate, Freddie, who, as I said, came in first place, and then unfortunately, 2 weeks later, did not, thanks to what happened on 9/11 in all probability. Luis and I have shared office space since then. So people say to me all the time, how'd you get so lucky investing in Hamilton? And I said, it's every Jewish New Yorker's story, real estate. That's, of course, the answer. Luis and I have developed, Luis is just the most remarkable human being in the world, in some ways. He is more like my father than anybody I've ever met. If Lin-Manuel, you've heard of that shithead, if Lin-Manuel had never had a day of professional success, Luis and Luz would still be role models for excellent parenting. It is not the prize, it's how they treat and love their kids. That he would do anything for a friend, including telling you with brutal honesty just how much you're fucking up. That we have more fun, my wife and I certainly have more fun pretending to be Puerto Ricans at his parties than they do pretending to be Jews at the bar mitzvah. I will tell you, while I want him to come up and regale you with Hamilton and other great stories, the one thing I asked you to do when we're done, you saw that great documentary, or you can watch it, called Siempre Luis on HBO. Also, do yourself a favor and just do a little YouTube search for Lin-Manuel Miranda's wedding, where you see Luis Miranda do an entire 10-minute piece of Fiddler on the Roof. And so our shared sort of immigrant story, the Jews and the Puerto Ricans of New York City, has brought Luis and I together in so many ways. I love him dearly. He has a passion for Puerto Rico, he has a passion for politics, and he is one of the best friends I could ever ask for. Ladies and gentlemen, Luis Miranda.
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is for tall people,
I know.
right?
Yes. There is a hand mic there if you want to step away from the podium.
Yes.
Yes. Now you can roam the stage.
Yeah, otherwise, I just see Caesar Palace. Want to thank Jeffrey. We have spent together now many decades, but I remember growing up in that little town that you saw with horses. This was just 3 years ago. And my favorite game was to make little flags of the party my family was affiliated with. And I had many cars. And I would put those little flags in each of the cars and spend hours moving one car at a time from one corner of the house to the other and do a caravan. It's incredible that 60 years later, I go to Orlando, where there is now 500,000 Puerto Ricans, and do flags and cars and caravans that go from one side of Kissimmee to the other side of Kissimmee. So my training in utilizing what is culturally relevant as a kid continues to be important now. I never thought that political consultant was going to put kids through college. When you're Puerto Rican and you go into a room of political consultants, there's not many people who look like me, who speak that like me 30 years ago or today. So it continues to be our responsibility to understand that we, on the one hand, can do any candidate with the political tools that we learn and that we have, and at the same time, we have the superpower of speaking Spanish, of not having to use Google Translation, and actually write Spanish in a way that may appeal to a Mexican American or a Mexican first generation or a Puerto Rican or a second generation Puerto Rican. And as we begin to grow as a community, we are finally beginning to understand the importance of talking to people like me, not only as a consultant, but as a voter. As the census, thank you, shows that we are 62 million strong, the largest minority in the country, we all better get used to our Mexican brother-in-law, because they're coming. They're coming into everybody's home. And then your granddaughter is gonna marry a Dominican. And your kids are gonna be of Dominican ancestry. So no longer we're gonna have to say, oh, I know you guys. My kid's nanny, it's from Central America. We love them. They're so sweet. Because they're going to be part of your family. They're going to be sitting at your Thanksgiving dinner. I remember when Hamilton began to become the sensation it did, getting invited to a dinner from the Hamiltons, like descendants of the Hamilton, like the fathers of the country. And here is this Puerto Rican, my wife is half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, and we show up to this dinner, and there's this brown kid. And I finally went to him and said, you're not serving food, so obviously you're not working at Tavern on the Green. How did you become a Hamilton? And he said, I married one. And that is the future of our country. When the kid of Puerto Rican and Mexican parents tell the story of our country in Hamilton, it shows the power of our country. That we are all going to tell the story of this country generation after generation. And it's the kid of Puerto Rican and Mexicans, the one that tells in Hamilton the stories of our founding fathers. So, as I do less and less political consultant, it's nice at many levels. One, because I don't give a shit about what I say. I don't have to protect clients anymore. Clients is not the most important thing in my head, and that is such a liberating feeling. I knew, as I was a political consultant, that if I had to be on TV, my candidate really fucked up, and I had to go and clean it up. Now I create my own message, and that is so liberating. But two, that I get to continue to do what I love, which is politics, from a totally different perspective. It's how do I recruit more Latinos to run? 18% of the population, still 1% of those of us who are elected. How do we raise money for them? And how do we use, because I have learned that as well, the newfound dollars that Hamilton brought to our lives to elect people that we like, that we support, and that we believe in what they believe. So doing that, it's very, very rewarding. I hate Congresswoman Green. I think she is such a fucking joke. And the first thing I did after I got fully vaccinated was to go to her town. First thing I did, I got on a plane and I went to Georgia, because in the research I realized 30% of the people living in the town where she got elected by default are Latinos, are Mexican immigrants, many of them in their second generation. And when I went there, I realized they're not registered to vote. They haven't gone through the process of becoming American citizens. And we end up with monsters like Congresswoman Green when we don't participate in the political process. And so what I will do until the day I get that other heart attack that finally puts me down, it's to continue to make sure that everyone participates in the political process, and to continue to make sure that we strengthen our democracy so Congress people like Green are never elected. Thank you, and thank you for having me here.